So Mark's gospel moves like a fast-paced documentary. Miracle after miracle, crowd after crowd, no time to breathe, and suddenly he just stops. Hey, welcome to the Berean Post. Together we slow down and search the scriptures, hearing you in their original word so that we can see Christ more clearly today. So let's begin now by reading this text together, shall we? Now Herod heard of him, for his name had become well known, and he said, John the Baptist is risen from the dead, and therefore these powers are at work in him. Others said it's Elijah, and others said it's the prophet, the one of the prophets. But when Herod heard this, he said, This is John whom I beheaded. He has been raised from the dead. For Herod himself had sent and laid hold of him and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. Because John had said to her, Herod, it's not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. Therefore Herodias held it against him and wanted to kill him, but she could not. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just and holy man, and she protected him. And when he heard it, he did many things, and he heard him gladly. And when the opportune day came, Herod, on his birthday, gave feast for his nobles, the high officers, and the chief men of Galilee. And when Herodias' daughter herself came in and danced, it pleased Herod and those who sat with him. The king said to the girl, Ask me whatever you want, and I will give it to you. And he also swore to her, Whatever you ask me, I will give it to you, up to half of my kingdom. So she went out and said to her mother, Well, what shall I ask? And she said, The head of John the Baptist. Immediately she came in with haste to the king and asked, saying, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And the king was exceedingly sorry, yet because of the oath he had made of those who sat with him, he did not refuse her. Immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went and beheaded him in prison, and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. And when the disciples heard of it, they came rather and took his corpse and laid it in a tomb. So, worst birthday party ever. I mean, because Herod's conscience wakes up and ruins the cake. Herod hears about Jesus and immediately thinks of John. Guilt has a long memory. And he's haunted by the man whose voice he had tried to silence. So let's meet the three main characters here in this story. First, we've got the king, Herod Antipas, and he's really under Rome's thumb. And this guy, he's craving legitimacy, but he's never going to get it. And he calls himself a king, but Rome just says, yeah, you're just a tetrarch. So he had power, but not authority. And in this case, he had luxury, but no peace. And then there is his mistress, his girlfriend, whatever you want to call it, sister-in-law. Then there's Herodias, and she's a niece and sister-in-law turned out wife. So it's political, it's scandalous, and it's exactly what John is confronting here. You know, the Herodian family tree is kind of less of a tree and more kind of like a scandalous pretzel. Like a knot. And finally, John the Baptist, God's truth marching around in sandals, a prophet who would rather lose his freedom than his integrity. John goes to him and says goes to Herod and says it's not lawful for you to have her. So he's not attacking the king, he's a prophet and he's warning the king, and truth always warns before the judgment falls. And then we have Herodias. She despises John, but Herod just can't let him go. So he locks him up, and yet he keeps going down to his cell to visit him, apparently, because he's intrigued by the truth, but he's also terrified by the truth. And really, that's the tragedy of a divided heart, loving the sound of conviction, but refusing to act on it. John's kind of like, Herod's kind of like, John, I really love your preaching and stuff like that, but can you kind of tone it down on the stuff where, I'm the one that's the problem, just a little, tone it down a bit, just a bit. And Herod fears John, he protects him, and then when pushed, Herod finally destroys John. So it's the slow corrosion of conscience under the weight of pride. So now the scene shifts. Herod's birthday. The dining hall's filled with the Galilean elite. Military officers, noblemen, city officials, the powerful watching the powerful perform. It's a perfect setting for pride to do its worst. Kind of like this first century influence party, all selfies and no soul. Yeah. And then Herodias sees her moment. Her daughter, history calls her Salome. It dances before the guests. It's a performance that's meant to seduce and to manipulate. Because Herod's drunk both on wine and flattery, and he makes this absolutely reckless vow. Ask me for whatever you want, even up to half of my kingdom. It's a public promise, loud, proud, and impossible. But pride always has a way to overpromise. The problem with Herod's kind of power is that it can never say no. He rules people, but his pride rules him. So here we have it now. Salome leaves the room after Herod says she can have whatever she wants, and she runs to her mother and she says, okay, so what should I ask for? And without hesitation, Herodias says, the head of John the Baptist. I mean, forget the diamonds, the land, jewelry, gold, or anything like that. This family, they want an execution. So the girl rushes back in. The request lands like a blade in the silence. She says, I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And you can imagine how Herod's conscience is screaming. But the whole room is watching. All of these noblemen, remember we said that were there, they're all watching, and he made a vow. So his pride now has trapped him. But he will not be the man who's going to lose face. No, somebody else is going to lose their head. So he ends up losing his soul instead. And this is where image management becomes a moral collapse. Because when pleasing people matter more than pleasing God, everything sacred is absolutely negotiable. So the executioner obeys, and the prophet who once cried in the wilderness is now silenced. And the platter arrives. The guests look away, and the music starts to play again, as if nothing's happened. John's disciples come quickly to take his body away, and they lay it in a tomb. Evil always celebrates too soon. Herod's feast ends up in shame, but John's faithfulness echoes into eternity. Herod silenced the voice, but he couldn't silence the truth that spoke it. The kingdom of God kept advancing, quietly, steadily, and unstoppable. So here, Mark's flashback, his little flashback in time, forces a choice. There are two tables. Herod's table, full of pride, flattery, and fear, and Christ's table, full of truth, humility, and life. At Herod's feast, everyone looks powerful for a night. At Christ's banquet, everyone kneels forever. So Herod had power for a day, and John had peace for eternity. I mean, come on, man, you do the math. John lost his head, but not his integrity. Herod kept his own crown, but lost his conscience. So, which table are we sitting at? Well, thanks much for watching today, and if you were encouraged, please hit the like button and share this video. And for more resources, visit thebereanpost.ca. And if you'd like to reach out, you can email me at any time at bereanspost@gmail.com. Until next time, we'll see you later, and peace to your home.